seductive promise of virtual reality is perhaps humanity's oldest promise, to be like God, to say, let there be, and manifest a world completely catered to your will and only limited by your imagination. Now, if you haven't tried VR, it's involving a head-mounted display that as you look around, the image goes into your brain and tells you you really are somewhere else. Because as you move, you're seeing the world around you. 3D spatial audio helps amplify that sense of presence. And in the more advanced systems of today, having a body or your own hands and the ability to move really tells every part of your sensory system, I am really somewhere else. That's why basically every technology company on the planet is spending billions of dollars to bring this technology to you, the consumer. Following the big spenders are my friends, thousands of guys doing little startups, each chasing their own vision of a killer app. And within all of that collective enthusiasm, storytelling has occupied a peculiar corner of the conversation. Now, because me and my co-founders were coming from Hollywood backgrounds, we found ourselves showing VR for the first time to a lot of the most iconic filmmakers and artists on the planet. And almost unanimously, masters of cinema reacted to VR with pessimism and anxiety because they could instinctively see that a lot of the tools they use for storytelling were not going to be readily available. I'll call that reaction the skeptic reaction. The opposite reaction is the VR revolutionaries who say, this is not just a new thing, it's the final frontier of all human interaction, and it's going to completely change and reinvent the way stories are told. Now, I disagree with both camps. To all my revolutionary friends, I say, look, the ancient rhythms of story are not changing. With every new medium, we invent ways to service story. And to the skeptics, I say, look, you are right that a lot of the ways, a lot of the techniques, a lot of the film language we've developed over the last 100 years does go away. But that doesn't change hero's journey. That doesn't change character arcs and conflicts, internal and external, changing people in ways that inspire and move us. So I thought that the best way to maybe perhaps suggest a few of the first tools, maybe like the ABC of the entire alphabet and the entire library of new film language for VR, is to just take you through a short story sequence of one of the projects I'm currently working on. So everyone put on your VR headset, and now imagine, when you put it on, you find yourself in this nice living room. You're sitting with a very pleasant professor. You're in America or Bermuda or somewhere nice. There's lots of sunlight. You can move around a little bit. You sink into this living room experience that you're in. Now, he's got up on his big fancy TV images of one of the world's most immersively strange and alien trash site communities. It's in Ethiopia. It's people who spend their entire life surrounded by trash. So much so that the children who live there don't have any capacity to imagine anything outside of Trash Mountain other than the truck drivers. That's what they all dream to become. So he's taking you through a really well-rehearsed presentation on the screen. His slides are changing. He's talking. But then something happens. His presentation's done. And as he starts to tell you about his first trip to Trash Mountain, he starts to get emotional. He starts to choke up. And he describes that feeling when you get there. Even though you've seen pictures, even though you've seen video, when you're really there, there's this overwhelming shift that happens in your soul. And as he's saying this, the walls disappear, the TV disappears. You're there. You have suddenly been transported. You've still got the rug, the chair, the couch. You and him are the same. But you've suddenly landed in Ethiopia. So much so that you have to turn around and look and see this whole world all around you. You're the person on the couch. And then it cuts to black. It's all black. It's not just a square rectangle black screen. You are deeply immersed in darkness. And a light comes on, and you're face to face with Daniel, one of the boys who lives in this site. When you lean, he keeps making eye contact with you. And he's excited. He's not tragic. He's not crying. He's a pumped up little kid. Today's the favorite day of the week for him because today's the day the airport truck comes. And he's telling you about it, and you don't quite understand what he's saying. But he reaches out his hand. He says, come with me. And as he stands up and runs, his entire shelter just disappears, and suddenly you are following him, and you're his size. You're going through a crowd of adults. They're 15, 20 feet high because you're scaled to Daniel's size. And he's weaseling his way through to the front of this crowd, and you're going along with him. It's in beautiful slow motion, so you have time to linger and look and examine these statuesque adults all around you. And when you break through the crowd, you end up under the truck, and you see other children coming out of the crowd with you. And they all start reaching their heads up to catch with their mouth liquids that are dripping out of the truck. And as you look around, all these kids are doing it, and they're happy. You hear the professor's voice, and he starts telling you that this is the largest shot of calories they're going to get that week because it's a mixture of leftover orange juice and water and motor oil and whatever else is in that truck. And now your view suddenly starts moving away from the kids, and it starts to zoom away from the crowd around the truck, and it zooms even further. You start to see this giant, surreal red marker that stays with you as you get all the way out to seeing from space Earth with hundreds of these red markers marking all of the trash sites around the world. Now, from behind, a giant frame, a big rectangle, flies in and suddenly reframes that world right back onto the screen next to the professor. And he says, one of his kind of big moment, one sentence thing he wants to leave everyone with, that you cannot throw trash away, you can only throw it on someone. So what is different about this sequence in VR than if it was just made by a great filmmaker as a traditional movie? The first thing I'd like to suggest is region of interest gets to be played with on a much wider dynamic range. So when you first start out in the room, you're looking at him, you're looking at the TV, you're looking at him. A traditional filmmaker would usually cut between those two things during an interview. Or occasionally, some traditional film shots really have a pronounced multiple region of interest. However, when he stops talking, that one of those regions goes away. And if he starts getting emotional, all of your attention starts to zero in on him. It's almost as if everything else goes away and you're just looking at the well of tears in his eyes. Now, as the walls disappear and that region of interest gets even bigger, you have to move. Cinema could never do this. No matter what cinema did, no matter how wide the shot, the screen was the box that everything had to happen on. Now, a lot of early attempts at VR storytelling leave people with an extremely wide region of interest for far too long. And that's why cutting to black, I think, is a very powerful tool. Truly immersive black is very powerful. So region of interest, scale. That moment when those people are 20 feet high, scaling the world bigger or scaling the world smaller from a fixed human perspective is a powerful storytelling technique that cinema attempted but never could achieve the way VR does. And of course, all black is really deeply powerful and can be used in a lot of ways. The powerful reality of storytelling in VR arrested me so much that I kind of pivoted my whole career in life to focus on raising a fund for just doing lots of VR storytelling. And these different early techniques are just the beginning of the whole new film language we'll develop and understand. But I think it's so powerful that I've actually developed a new hope for humanity to create a connection between the stories we engage with and the enjoyment and the benefits of watching movies, watching stories, engaging with media, and what those things actually do to us. Not categorization of genres, which is important, or the kind of aesthetic critique of the quality of a story, but I'm talking about actually growing our understanding of what stories do to us. Now, that might sound very academic or esoteric, or as my wife says, the hopeful optimism of a dreamer. But the reason I have this hope is we already do this with food. If I say my serious documentary is like a kale salad, or some new addictive zombie shooter game is like a decadent dessert, everyone basically knows the difference between what vegetables do to our body or what sugar does to our body. The importance of developing a holistic, healthy, balanced media diet is something that I think is going to be even more important as virtual reality and augmented reality and simulations become so real. Now, I don't know what the unexpected insights we're going to find are, or which consumption patterns are going to take on the stigma of drug addiction or even overconsumption and things like that. I would say we've already seen early evidence of addictive patterns in our relationship with our devices. So, the number one way that I think we can develop this understanding of a media diet is going to take a lot of research and academics, but it's also on those storytellers who are embracing VR now to start being a bit more intentional. We're all in the same room, we're all a globalized world, and we can say, why am I telling this story? Take the attitude of a chef saying, what am I making? Am I making a meal? Am I making a snack? Am I making a drug? And if so, what do I feel about that? And what is that offer on the menu compared to everything else that's being made? And as consumers, I think it's the same exact question. Why am I drawn to this story? What is it about this movie or this story or this series or this game that really attracts me and really makes me want to consume it over and over and over? I'd even suggest that we're already needing to ask that question about some of our social media feeds. But I think if we can, the sooner we can develop a sense of a healthy media diet, the sooner we'll all be able to collectively enjoy and leverage the benefits of this new technology. A much more attractive promise is a world where everyone is engaged with virtual worlds that improve us to then engage and improve the real world. Thanks.